This episode of Across Indiana is made possible through a grant from Iconic America and by viewers like you. Thank you.
It's time again, Hoosiers, for a trip across Indiana. We'll meet the man known as the Brushmaster, whose hand-painted signs are approaching legendary status in Indianapolis. We'll investigate the state's insect, the firefly, and we'll meet a woman who escaped a horrible situation and found safety and a home in Indianapolis. We're here at the Sculpture Trails in Solsberry, Indiana. I'm here with Sam Oliver, who did a story about this. Sam, where in the heck did you even hear about it?
In my time living in Indiana, I've met so many awesome creative professionals.
There's still more pieces to come.
I just love seeing what creative people can do with their imaginations and just making cool stuff. I wanted to shed some light on those creative professionals. So I went online, I searched, and I found this place called the Sculpture Trail, and I was just struck by the beauty of the sculptures and the fact that they are just in this humble, down-to-earth environment and accessible and free to everyone. I had to come check it out.
All right, well, let's let you check it out. Here's the Sculpture Trails.
So, I had an old teacher that told me, he said, pouring aluminum is like taking a drink of milk. Pouring bronze is like having a beer, and pouring iron is like having a shot of bourbon. And he's right.
So you like bourbon the best?
I do.
Awesome.
It takes a special kind of person to make this type of art.
We're at Sculpture Trails. My name is Jerry Massey. I'm the founding director, and I guess this is my big crazy mess.
This big, crazy mess attracts Hoosiers across Indiana as well as 3D artists across the nation, all to the small town of Solsberry.
We are pretty much in the middle of Indiana, about 50 miles south of Indianapolis, 15 minutes west of Bloomington.
Inside these molds are one-of-a-kind works of art that will eventually find their home along the Sculpture Trail, an outdoor museum nestled in the woods with over 180 cast iron sculptures along 3 miles of well-maintained hiking trails.
The one thing about the trails is it'll always be here, open and free. So bring your families out when you have nothing to do. It's a great place for a walk, enjoy nature. And it's a cool place to see some sculpture that has been made by artists that are still alive and kicking and want to make more.
While many come here just to walk the trail, tonight Jerry and his team of artists are putting on a show.
Tonight is our biggest event of the whole year. When we cast iron, we will usually do it at nighttime because it's really dangerous and we really don't want the public around when we do it, just for liability. But at the same time, we want to show the public what's going on. So this one night of the year we call Fire at Night is the one time we let the public come on out and celebrate with us the end of a month of creating cast iron with artists from around the world. You can come out early and carve some scratch blocks and make a relief sculpture. We have a bowl mold that you could carve into and create a cast iron bowl. Of course, there is a lot to see and just hang out and watch. So a lot of folks love that. And this will be probably our last pour, putting us over 30,000 pounds of metal for the whole month. So that's a lot of metal for a bunch of young artists to be casting out in the middle of nowhere. It's fun to watch.
So, what goes into making one of these cast iron sculptures?
So an artist will show up with a pattern and they show up and say, hey, we want to cast this in iron. So we will take sand molds and build a mold around it. Then we'll pull the pattern out, put the mold back together, and then we'll create a gating system where the metal can be poured and vented. And then, boom, we turn it into metal. Now, once it's metal, they still have, hundreds of hours to grind it, chase it, finish it, get it installed. So even though it's cast, it still has a long way to go.
Everyone you see in orange shirts are actually interns. All of these artists have been here for weeks preparing molds for today's event.
So our internship program, they get to come in, they get to build a piece, and if it gets into the exhibition, it can be on showing for 2 years. They'll have the experience of around 60,000 pounds of sand mold making, multi-part mold making. The big problem for young artists is money. So that's our big goal, is to reduce their financial burden and give them actually 15 tons of experience. You know, I make sculptures, a lot of my buddies make sculptures, and I was literally putting them out on the property, kind of to store them a little bit, with the intention of maybe we'll create some kind of a museum. And it sure has blown this community up. Everybody's really excited about sculpture trails, and we're excited for the next 20 years. Whether we promote it or not, everybody's showing up. Artists keep applying, so it's become one of these things that's just growing and growing and growing without us involved at all. It's just a beast that's started. Like, we never even sat down and decided to do this. It just exploded into something.
Want to get involved? Jerry says there are several ways Hoosiers can help.
Best thing to do if you want to get involved is go right into the website, sign up with the contact list, volunteer list, throw $1 in the donation box, throw some sticks off the path, you know, and make sure you follow us on Instagram so you know what's going on.
All right, we're still out here on the sculpture trails. I'm here with Jerry Massey, the founder of this place. Tell me a little bit about the sculptures you were pouring in that story and where they are right now.
Well, a lot of those pieces are scattered all over the country. A select few are installed here. They're scattered out along the trails. So
I heard they were in the back, like that's further away, right?
Yeah, we're getting really big.
We're gonna B-roll that one.
In fact, we just installed sculpture number 200.
What? There's 200, okay.
So,
why would you want to have all of this art out here in the middle of nowhere?
that's a fabulous question. And if I could catch up to myself and ask myself that, I would like to know also.
That's a great answer.
This one over here. Growing up out here, I never got to see anything like big, large sculpture. I didn't learn about melting metal until I went to college and seeing we were melting metal every week, making sculptures, and I thought, I gotta bring that back home. It's open sun up to sundown every day. So come on out for a walk at the trails.
Very cool. Up next is a story about another artist who puts art out in the unexpected places in a way.
We call it the hood.
We'll meet Jasper Mississippi Travis, AKA the Brushmaster. Kyle Long has the story.
All right.
It was during the late 1990s that I first encountered the unique hand-painted signs of Jasper Mississippi Travis, also known as the Brushmaster.
Some people call me the Brushmaster.
Until recently, the Brushmaster was totally unaware of my interest in his work.
I was out taking pictures, and you were there, and you were kind of messing with me a little bit.
He's like, do you know the artist that painted that? I'm like, yeah, I know him. And he's like, oh, well, can you introduce me?
The visual landscape of my hometown was dominated by commercially manufactured signs bearing dull corporate logos. It felt generic, cold, and lifeless.
Manufactured sign, they just to the point and that's it. They don't have any abnormalities. It gives it character.
The Brushmaster signs were different. The colors were bold. The use of space was unorthodox. His signs were filled with eccentric details that bore the mark of human touch.
But this one is still here, though it is disappearing. Mississippi did a lot of beauty salons, barber shops, and these silhouettes became one of the trademark ways that I would identify his work. No one paints a silhouette like the Brushmaster, as you can see.
Born and raised in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, the Brushmaster began painting and drawing while caring for his mother.
It was a little different from Mayberry, but it was still rural.
She was an artist and encouraged her son to pursue art.
I had to do, hold her hand. Then she started telling me, I want this or I want that drawn, and I started drawing, and I liked it.
Later, life took Mississippi to Chicago, where he began painting in and on neighborhoods. His mastery of the brushwork business would soon lead to Indianapolis.
I painted this place called Frog Records. on College. And the other one's 38th Street Men's Club. And it wasn't even on 38th Street, but that was the name of it. I remember those were the first.
The 38th Street Men Club. The club was located at 18th Street and College Avenue, 20 blocks south of 38th. The idiosyncrasies of the sign and the club's location brightened my day every time I passed by. Until one day, when it just disappeared. A few months later, I spotted the sign propped up against the wall on a small building, and on that day, I took my first photo of a Brushmaster sign. For the next year, I traveled through big and small neighborhoods across the city, photographing his work. From Hawville to Mapleton Fall Creek, from Keystone Avenue to Martindale Brightwood. For almost 20 years, these photos gathered dust in an old shoebox in my bedroom closet. At the peak of his activity, the Brushmaster's work covered an enormous stretch of the Indianapolis landscape.
I knew I had to make a living some kind of way, so I got up and did just grind. Every time I was painting one place, 4 or 5 other people would ask me, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And I'm like, I was ready for that, because it was basically supporting myself.
Around 2016, I started sharing the photos on social media in hopes of connecting with the Brushmaster himself. And I discovered that I wasn't the only one who appreciated his work. My social media post sharing his art went viral. That eventually led me to the Brushmaster's home.
How are you?
How you doing? It's good to see you.
You too. We were talking about bringing you a cake, but I don't know if you eat sweets or what. There were abnormalities in your work. Is that intentional? Do you know that?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is.
You see the use of quotes. Mac is not in quotes, but cheese is in quotes.
We call it the hood. They have to have varieties of business in one place because, of survival.
He does want to include messages of peace and social justice in his work. This neighborhood has been plagued by violence. Obviously, it says non-violence juice on the bottle, and that's one of the things that makes his work so appealing, is that there are eccentricities in the spelling and in the lettering. It has that handmade element.
Be something, That's what I wanted to promote.
Despite his rising fame in Indianapolis, the Brushmaster's work is becoming scarce in the city. The rapid spread of gentrification throughout Indianapolis has erased much of Mississippi's art. When new developments go up, the Brushmaster's work comes down.
The world is going to change anyway, and I just have to change with it. My mom told me, keep doing what I do.
In my eyes, the Brushmaster has become a modern-day John Henry. One man with a brush, taking on an entire industry of mass-produced, machine-printed signs, one wall at a time.
As long as I'm living, then I'm gonna always paint.
Every year, Rashida's Freedom Day is celebrated in Indianapolis, in the neighborhood known as Martindale Brightwood. I had the honor of learning why a film was made of her story.
It's like a family reunion, kind of.
All my grandchildren have children.
There's a feeling in the neighborhood that it's coming. Her day, that Freedom Day. Every year, she tells the story.
I am Joanna Lenoir. My entire family, my mother, my brother, my 2 sisters, and my oldest daughter moved to Indianapolis.
Since 1964, Joanna has celebrated her family's escape from hell.
We called it Rashida's Freedom Day because my mother was set free.
Rashida's Freedom Day caught the attention of the Harrison Center and filmmaker Deja Henry.
It's just so powerful what stories can do for people. That's really what pushes me to make film.
Rashida was a mother of 4 in the 60s, struggling to get by in St. Louis.
She'll be better off at the neighbors.
Her second husband, an abusive alcoholic.
He was just evil and ignorant. By the time I was 14, I just absolutely hated him.
Joanna, the oldest of Rashida's 3 children, wanted a new life for her mother and siblings.
My brother and sister at that time did not know what was going on.
She had seen her stepfather physically abuse her mother.
He had come into our lives when I was younger than Sheila. I don't remember where my mother met him. I remember that he'd been a soldier.
She was beautiful. I think my mother was just young and didn't know what she was looking for or how to find what she needed. She was just bullied into everything. And I don't think she knew how to fight back.
Soon, things would get worse. Joanna would be raising her own child at the age of 15. The emotional, physical, and later sexual abuse had taken its toll, and Joanna had decided it was going to be over, one way or another.
They sent me to live with a neighbor for a little bit after my baby was born. The weekend that my mother brought me back home, my mother's husband had been drinking, and I could just see what was coming.
Glad you're back.
I called my mother on her job, and I told her that if she didn't come home and leave right away, that I was gonna kill her husband. I just wasn't gonna take any more. I meant every word that I said. And we took off.
They fled by bus to Indianapolis with what they could carry, and they've been here ever since.
Came right to that house right there. That night, we all sat out there on the porch and we cried for a few minutes and we talked about, what all we done left and all the things we left. And Mama came out and said, but now all you got to do now is look to the future to see what you have, because you'll never have to worry about being misused again.
Columbia Avenue in Martindale-Brightwood seemed like paradise.
The following day, my brother went over there to Fall Creek, came back and said, y'all come on, I done found us a lake.
Almost everybody on that block had children. Adults played hide and seek with us, and it was just fun.
Neighbors soon became family.
How you doing, beautiful?
I'm wonderful. How you doing?
All right.
And the very next summer, the first Rashida's Freedom Day happened.
We had the first one the 14th of July, a year after we came.
Rashida later married a man that knew how to love her and all of her children.
She had met another man, and he was one of the kindest people I've ever met. And he was very good to her, and he loved her very much, and he showed it. He showed us, her children, that he loved her.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Today, Rashida's Freedom Day continues to grow.
If you don't belong to the family, you would feel a part of the family.
We've been getting phone calls all morning. Well, what you need, what we got to bring, what you got, just bring your ass, that's all. Just bring your ass.
And for those in the neighborhood and this family, Joanna's escape has been an inspiration.
It gave me like a stronger connection with my family because seeing all the stuff that we've been through and the history of it, it makes me want to be closer with them.
She knows probably everybody on the block. Everybody loves her. If you meet her, you'll say, "Ooh, she's a good person."
She's a person that's not gonna take too much. She'll let you know.
I don't think we're gonna ever stop getting on each other's nerves, but thank the good Lord, we still just as tight as the day Mama brought us here.
And thanks to Deja Henry's film, even more people know about Rashida's Freedom Day.
Miss Joanna, for a long time, didn't tell people what it actually was celebrating. So I see this circle of freedom. As she tells her story, she's getting freedom. As we told the story through film, those who watched it would stand up and tell us that because of this story, they felt free to tell their own story of survival.
It's a wrap.
There are parts of it that will probably be painful to me until I die. Maybe if somebody else hears what I went through, that they would have the courage not to stay as long as I did and put up with as much as I did before they would make a move. Because I wouldn't want anybody to suffer that.
Our final tale is about something we see every summer on those Indiana nights. Some call them lightning bugs, some call them fireflies. Producer Jeremy Sage tells us just how lucky we are to have them.
Indiana has the best fireflies, also known as lightning bugs. They're actually beetles, of course. When I moved to California, I made my girlfriend a fake jar of them every year to remind her of the Midwest, unaware how much of a romance language I was really using. Let's travel across Indiana to learn more. First stop, a firefly expert with the Indianapolis Zoo.
Fireflies produce bioluminescence, so they produce light in darkness with their own bodies, and that's something that very few animals do in the terrestrial environment. Their mating song is sung in light. All of that has quite a lot of undertones of passion. It's something different, and that has something sort of magical in it.
The firefly's glow began as a way to alert predators, telling them, hey, if you eat me, you'll regret it. But as evolution evolved, the warning sign took on a new use. Males and females started using their glow to talk to each other, let them know they are available. Are there any type of flashes that are more popular with the ladies?
That's a good, well, I don't know about human ladies. With female fireflies, some of the most popular flashes seem to be the ones that are very fast. So a lot of the speed of flashing and number of flashes seem to indicate, good quality. A male firefly is the one that keeps flashing and keeps going, because it's very rare for a female firefly to pick the first male she will see flashing. It's usually about, seeing a male, persistence, and being in the right place at the right time.
Here's how to spot the 3 most common fireflies you might see in Indiana.
One of the first flashing fireflies in Indiana is the spring treetop firefly, and their flash pattern is fairly simple. They have a lot of rhythm, because a firefly with no rhythm is a dead firefly, but their pattern is a flash, 1, 2, flash, 1, 2, flash. Probably the most common fireflies in Indiana, even here in Indianapolis, and it's called the Big Dipper because it has a flight pattern mixed with a light pattern, which does a wong, and then silence, wong. And it does that a few times, and because they have a low flight, they're very easy to catch. And they also fly fairly low, so a child can get them. As that firefly goes, the wiggle dancer, it's usually described as a flicker or a strong flicker, which is something like trrr, and then nothing, trrr. The sage firefly, so the state insect, will actually glow orange, because it looks like a flicker of a candle, so it's very yellow-orangey like that. And it has a kind of very orange glow.
The sage firefly is Indiana's official state insect. We travel now to West Lafayette, where the concern of a student and her teacher made it all happen.
Well, I always believed in the teachable moment. And when Kayla borrowed, one of my books, it was a guide to the 50 states. And she came back 2 days later and said, as a 7-year-old, very soft-spoken young lady, we have a problem And I was taken aback.
It appeared that a lot of other states, a vast majority, they had their own state insects. So out of curiosity, I asked, what would it take to create a state insect for Indiana? So then that kind of spurred on this project that would span 4 years. A lot of work, a lot of letters, postcards, petitions, signatures.
We persevered. That's what the kids wanted to do each year. No, we don't want to give up.
At the time, I was more excited to skip school, but talking to legislators was good. We finally got to our governor.
He was very interested in the letter that my students wrote to him with all the facts they had researched and vetted with the Purdue entomologists, and he wanted to come up and meet the firefly kids, as he called them.
And when I see fireflies around, I get excited that I was able to achieve that these little bugs are representing Indiana. The logic behind the Say's firefly is that it was discovered by Thomas Say, someone who lived in New Harmony, Indiana.
Thomas Say, the father of descriptive entomology in the U.S., moved to New Harmony, Indiana in the 1800s, which was an educational mecca for scientists, and lived the rest of his life there. We traveled to this historic small town to discover a full-on firefly festival.
Fireflies in New Harmony.
And the fireflies flicker.
Complete with lightning bug lectures, firefly drinks, glowworm dances, and a tour into the woods to see what they call natural fireworks.
And the fireflies flicker.
Thomas Say is no longer with us, but what about his namesake insect? How are they doing these days?
In the early 19th century, it was considered to be one of the most common fireflies. Now, as I look for it now, I rarely find it. For some time, they are so rare, I thought they were gone. The flashing fireflies like to live in darkness. Of course, there's different stages to the night. We all know that. There's the golden hour, and then there's like a twilight, and then it gets proper dark. And fireflies know that as well. They've evolved for those different slots of different nighttime. So depending on light pollution in the area, they might not be there altogether. The state firefly has that, sadly, that potential that we might have overlooked its demise. It was considered common, it's clearly not common now. And if we continue to treat the environment the way we are, we might lose the state insect in its home state altogether.
As it turns out, I had the right flash pattern after all. That girlfriend married me, and we are back home again in firefly country. However, due to habitat loss, toxic chemicals, and light pollution, there are fewer fireflies now than in the past. So, the next time you see one, make a wish upon their star that the children of the future will always dance to their silent love songs.
All right. Have yourself a good firefly tour.
And that's it for this trip. Thanks for joining us in Solsberry, Indiana. We'll see you next time.
This episode of Across Indiana is made possible through a grant from Iconic America and by viewers like you. Thank you.